This is the IBJ podcast for the week of March the 9th, 2020, brought to you by the law firm Craig DeVault. I'm Mason King. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Okay, we all know that Indianapolis hangs its hat on being a convention and tourism destination, and that strategy does not work without hotel rooms. By latest count, downtown Indianapolis has about 7,700 hotel rooms, which has been sufficient for a Super Bowl, a Final Four, all of the big annual conventions the city hosts like Gen Con and the FFA Confab. Now, this might blow your mind. There are as many as 4,200 more rooms in the pipeline for downtown, proposed over 19 hotel projects that have been announced in the last few years. The vast majority of these are pretty modest, planning between 90 and 220 rooms. The big exceptions are the two Hilton hotels planned for Pan Am Plaza and adjacent to the Indiana Convention Center, one with 814 rooms and the other with about 600. Now, that project came about because city and local tourism officials believe the market can absorb those rooms and have the critical mass required to help attract even more convention and tourism business. But what about all these other hotels? 7 already are under construction, but it's unlikely that all 19 are going to be built. And none of the developers have blinked yet, much less officially tabled their plans. Well, we finally have some indication of which projects are struggling. There are 3 proposed hotels, each within about a block of the other, that have hit snags in recent months, raising doubts about whether they'll move forward or ultimately get scrapped. Now, with me in the studio today is IBJ real estate and hospitality reporter Mickey Shuey, who's been keeping tabs on all these projects. Mickey, thanks for making the time.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Now, in a few minutes, we'll also have an interview with a hotel consultant who can address some of the nuts and bolts issues that affect hotel development. But first, let's talk about these 3 hotels that have run into trouble. And let's start with the Kimpton, since that's the one that has been out there hanging the longest. It was announced in December 2017. The project entails renovating the One North Penn building at Pennsylvania and East Washington Street and could cost as much as $55 million. It would have 130 rooms. So what's the holdup?
So the holdup right now appears to be twofold. The project is evidently waiting on approval from the National Park Service, which awards tax credits for historic building renovations. I last communicated with the firm's principal, Drew Loftus, in January, and he told me that the project was moving forward at that time, but without those tax credits in place, they were still kind of waiting.
And this is the developer?
Yes,
yes. Loftus and Robinson?
Yes, Loftus Robinson is the developer behind this project. But in addition to the National Park Service tax credits, they're also, it seems, still waiting on financing. Most projects have to go through banks to get financing, and so far, based on searches of mortgage records with Marion County, they have not received a mortgage for that property yet. So they're still waiting on that.
Right. And you have not spoken with Drew or communicated with them since early in the year. They would not return your calls for this story.
Correct. I made several calls and put in several requests for comment for this, but they did not get back with me. So it's really unclear where things stand on their end with moving this project forward.
And as I recall, they had some problems with tenants who wanted to remain in the building.
Yes.
And being able to clear the building of tenants in a timely manner.
Yes. So Centier Bank, which sat right on the corner there of Washington and Pennsylvania streets, they actually were in a lawsuit over remaining in that space. It's a long, convoluted situation, but ultimately Centier decided that it would go ahead or agreed at least to move out, and they're now on South Meridian Street.
Yeah, but it doesn't appear like there's been much work done, certainly in the last few months. Is that right?
There really hasn't been. I've been by there, it feels like every day for the past 2 or 3 months, and every time I go by, I always look at that site just to kind of keep tabs on it. And there really, from what I've seen, has not been any work done on that property since at least mid-January. F.A. Wilhelm, the construction manager for that project, I haven't seen them on site in a couple months. Although Loftus did say when I was emailing with him back in January that they were going to do some interior demolition work, but only a little bit of that until they receive those tax credits. So it's not really clear what's going on there right now, but it seems like the project has stopped altogether.
And Loftus and Robinson has some other fish to fry. They have another hotel project in Speedway that is running into delays.
You really want to get into this, Mason?
Not a lot, but let's at least cover the basics.
So, yes, they have the Wilshaw project just south of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That project is part of a larger development that they partnered with Skinnell Properties on. But this hotel portion has been stopped since at least July, and that's created a lot of problems in the town of Speedway and for town officials, because they're getting quite a bit of incentives for this project in terms of infrastructure improvement, and town officials have really been trying to get them to tell them why there's been delays. In this case, it's very similar, it seems, to the Kimpton project, in that, from what I've discovered, they don't have a mortgage in place for that hotel yet, and they're just kind of stopped right now.
Let's move on to the Aloft project, which has been earmarked for 136 East Market Street, and that's basically one block north of the Kimpton. This was announced in August 2018, and again, it would entail renovating an existing building. It would have 128 rooms over 12 floors. What seems to be happening there?
Honestly, nobody really seems to be sure on that one either. A couple sources with whom I've spoken in recent weeks have told me that it has to do with a tenant issue, but there really hasn't been any sign of tenants being in that building, I'd say the past 6 months at least. But to my knowledge, there really hasn't been any work on that building since last November at least. They do have construction permits for that site, and at least the lobby area, what would be the lobby area, has been torn out and is just waiting construction now. But they do have financing in place for that project, a $15 million loan. So it seems like that project is ready to move forward in terms of the financing. So what the holdup right now isn't entirely clear.
So who's the developer on that project?
The developer on that one is Everwood Hospitality Partners. They're actually based in Columbus, Indiana. They have some presence in New York as well, but they are the ones developing this project. They didn't get back to me either, much like Loftus Robinson, so it's not really clear what they're thinking right now.
And the third project was only very recently announced. It would be on the site of the Morrison Opera House building at 47 South Meridian. And the vision here is really aggressive. It's 18 stories built on top of the existing building. That would include hotel units as well as some residential. And Bruce Bodner, the owner of the building, is trying to figure out how to finance what would be, a $60 million project? What's the latest?
I spoke with Bodner earlier this week, actually, and he told me he's still looking for investors. He said there's been some interest, but nothing set in stone yet by any means. He's also still trying to get the city to budge on whether it's going to offer incentives for this project. He's really looking for that tax increment financing that a lot of developers have found popular in recent years. But the city historically has not backed mid-size hotel projects with that tool. They've been very slow to do that. So it seems right now unlikely that he's going to get them to budge on that. And if he doesn't, it honestly sounds like that project may not move forward unless he gets a hefty group of investors to buy in, or a pretty good bank loan.
Now, speaking of financing, I spoke with Drew Dimond. He's the president of Indianapolis-based Diamond Hotel Consulting Group, to get a better sense of the bigger picture and some of the market forces that are at play. Here's some of our conversation. Drew, thanks so much for making time for us today.
Glad to talk about hotels anytime.
All right. So my first question is, how unusual is it in a market the size of downtown Indianapolis to see 20 projects in some stage of development, even if it's just having been announced at the same time?
Well, it's not only Indianapolis. I'm seeing this across the country, although, say, in the last 9 months it's slowed down. What's happened is that hotels have become the preferred commercial real estate development, and that's because we've enjoyed 10 straight years of growth. This is very unusual because the hotel cycles usually peak in about 5 years, and then they go down, and then they come back up. But since the downturn in 2007 and 8, hotels started to come back strong in 2010. So Indianapolis is not exempt from the targets of hotel development.
And when you say growth, are you talking in terms of occupancy of the hotels, or something else?
Well, what we mean by growth is supply has grown because the metrics are up. The average daily rate is up, occupancy is up. I'll give you another example of a city. Nashville, Tennessee, where we do a lot of work, has 6,000 rooms, not just announced, but actually under construction that are going to come online within the next 12 months.
Wow. What was happening down in Nashville that was driving all of that construction?
Well, it's just a boom town. Nashville had a lot of demand generators created by new businesses coming there, creating a lot of jobs. And, of course, that has created a lot of problems there, traffic-wise, trying to find labor, that type of thing. But it's just been booming, and it's been primarily happening in downtown.
Now, most of the projects here in Indianapolis are pretty modest in size, the ones that have been announced, and most are proposing somewhere between 90 and 200 rooms. Is that a trend? And if so, why is that a trend?
No, I think what you have to consider is who's announcing this. Now, if a brand themselves, such as Marriott or Hilton, would announce that they are going to build a hotel, it's probably going to get done. However, if someone who's never been in the business, who's been a real estate developer, they could have just talked to one of the brands for a franchise, and perhaps maybe the brand said, we'll hold that franchise for you for, say, 90 days. Well, maybe they go ahead and announce that. That may not happen. There's an old stanza in a jazz song that says, romance without finance ain't got a chance. That's the same thing with hotels. When they get financing, then we get serious about considering them. So it's dependent upon the stage of development. First is the announcement, then is the early planning stages, and then when the financing is secured, we would consider them a go. But we don't pay too much attention to announced hotels when we do our market and feasibility studies. We try to project supply demand based on the announcements, but we don't make them serious contenders unless they're going to come on stream within 3 to 4 years.
Mm-hmm. So when we say financing, what exactly does that mean for folks who aren't really familiar with that term?
It starts with construction financing and then permanent financing. But the simplest way to explain it is a developer takes the project to a lender and makes a deal. The lender makes the commitment, and that hotel is probably going to go.
And that's simply just having the money to do what you want to do, to build, and then, I guess, and then to maintain.
That's exactly.
Okay, let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsor. This is the IBJ Podcast.
The IBJ Podcast is brought to you by Krieg DeVault, a trusted and dynamic law firm representing a wide variety of local, regional, and national clients. Committed to each other and to every client, Krieg DeVault prides itself on integrity, professionalism, respect, and excellence. Financial institutions, global manufacturers, national healthcare providers, and successful organizations of all sizes and market focus rely on Krieg DeVault to create innovative and successful business solutions. Connect today at www.kriegdevault.com.
All right, we're back with the IBJ Podcast. I'm Mason King, and we're talking with hotel consultant Drew Dimond about the downtown hotel market. So of the projects, the 20-some that we're talking about in Indianapolis, do you have a sense of how many of those actually have financing?
No, I don't. I can't speak to them individually, but as I said, as a group, it depends on where they are in the stages of development. I would say if they've had a market and feasibility study completed and their drawings are final, I'd consider them more serious addition to the supply for downtown Indianapolis than if they've merely been announced and there hasn't been any activity since.
Yeah, now none of these developers have formally said they're bowing out. Are they waiting for something? Are they waiting to hear about something?
I think they're waiting. You know, we've had a black swan event happen in the last few weeks with the coronavirus. I'm seeing conventions canceled all over the country. I think some businesses have told their employees to stay home, not to travel so much. I think there's a lot of unknown here. and that's affected the airline industry as well as the hotel industry. Now, Indianapolis is primarily a group, the downtown, primarily a group market. And I think the Visit Indy has done a great job bringing groups over time. But I haven't seen too many new businesses come into Indianapolis that are going to create the demand. We call it commercial demand. That would be a business person visiting a business in a market.
One of the wild cards, it appears to me, is the two Pan Am hotel developments. Those are probably the two biggest that have been proposed. One, I think, 814 rooms, the other about 600. And they still need to work out some details with the city. Are developers waiting to see what happens with those?
They probably are. I think you're spot on with that.
Is there a window of opportunity here for developers? Any sense that, if they don't get this going in the next couple of years, that really they're going to lose their opportunity? Or can they just hold on?
I would look at, does the developer actually own that property, that site that the hotel's going to be built on? That makes a big difference because a lot of these options run out.
Options in terms of?
Options to buy.
Oh, to actually buy the property.
Yeah, so I would say, does the developer actually own the property? How long is their commitment for the franchise agreement? So they have to keep it going, they're going to have to continue to make deposits.
If they wait too long, are they in danger of running into a recession?
That's out of my wheelhouse. That would mean I would be able to predict a recession. But I do see demand for hotel rooms flattening. They're not going to continue, at least short term here, as they have in the past.
And why is that?
Well, there's a lot of supply. That's a factor. As I mentioned earlier, I don't see too many new businesses coming into downtown that are going to create guest room demand. The group business is good, the tourist business is good, but that weekday business that's usually occupied by a commercial traveler, I think that's flat.
Oh, gotcha. So you're talking about seeing demand flatten in terms of the Indianapolis market?
Yes.
Well, excellent. This has been a huge help. I appreciate it. One of the things we could have addressed in a little more detail is the rise in construction costs over the last 2 months and how that can change the complexion of a project. And maybe the best example of this isn't downtown Indianapolis, but rather in Carmel, where the Hotel Carmichael project is nearing completion at a cost of nearly $60 million. That is nearly 50% higher than early estimates. And this isn't necessarily a big project. It's just 122 rooms, but it's supposed to be very upscale. And the Carmel Redevelopment Commission has in part blamed skyrocketing construction costs due to the tight labor market and volatile costs for construction materials. Have we seen building costs have an impact on any of the downtown hotel projects so far?
So those changes really haven't hit the downtown market yet, at least from what I've heard. I do know of one instance, that being REI Real Estate's plans for the dual-branded Moxie AC Hotel on South Meridian Street. Initially, that project was supposed to be about $50 million. Now I'm hearing that it's going to be closer to $60 million. Certainly, that's nothing to scoff at, but it's nowhere near the near 50% increase my colleague Kirk Christian has reported on the Carmichael.
And we know of a few other projects that don't have financing yet. Can you give us some examples?
There are a few. The Even project, 118-room, $24 million partnership between the owner of Shapiro's and Dora Hospitality Group, based in Fishers. They're hoping to get financing in place within the next couple months. And then there's Carr Investments, LLC, which is developing the Avid Hotel, a 104-room project just south of Interstate 70. They're looking to spend about $10 million on that project. And in that project is also hoping to finalize financing here in the next few months. And then there's Sun Development. They have a lot of irons in the fire right now. They're actually developing the Hampton Inn Homewood Suites dual-branded project at 414 West Vermont Street. That involves the restoration of an old church. In addition to that, though, they are also pursuing a couple projects in the downtown core. And those would be the Tapestry project, which has actually moved from the Ike and Jonesy's building at 233 McRae Street to a lot that they were originally going to put a Cambria on. That project is going to be a $30 million development. They're hoping to finalize financing by the end of the year on that. But it is the lowest priority for them because in that Ike and Jonesy's building, they're now planning another hotel. They won't tell us what brand that would be yet, but that would be about a $15 to $18 million investment that they're also trying to firm up financing.
So they have the one in the renovated church property on Vermont, which is probably the top priority because it's almost done.
Yes, that's supposed to be done by the end of the year.
And then they have down on either side of McRae Street by South Meridian Street, they have the Tapestry, which is going to go
on a vacant parking lot.
Right, on a vacant parking lot. And then in the building where they were going to do the Tapestry, which is where Ike and Jonesy's used to be. In fact, they had to move out because the building was going to be turned into a hotel. They're going to do another flag, some other hotel brand, but we don't know what it is yet.
That is correct.
This is perfectly emblematic of like the downtown hotel market. Things have been changing so fast. And here's just one developer who has, so many different irons in the fire.
Absolutely.
What is the status of the Pan Am Plaza development? There's a very long process where the city was interested in getting different proposals from developers so they could create really a very critical mass of hotel rooms downtown that would, as we mentioned at the beginning, be able to handle overflow demand from the current hotels, but also just by virtue of being there, help create more demand for downtown and more convention traffic downtown. But there's a holdup there. What is that?
Right now, they are in the process of finalizing a deal. That is the city, the Capital Improvement Board, which owns the convention center. Certainly worth reminding people that there is a $120 million convention center expansion as part of all of this. And then Kite Realty Group Trust, the local-based company that is pursuing this. So right now, the city is confident that they're going to have a deal finalized and made public by the end of this month. Whether that happens or not is to be determined.
And this is a deal for what?
So this would be a deal for kind of all these pieces that are part of this. It would be for the convention center, which is going to be publicly financed, but also probably some infrastructure and other subsidies, if you will, for Kite's own projects, which are being privately financed for the most part for those hotels, which would add 1,400 rooms downtown.
So Kite is developing the two hotels, but it's also involved to an extent in the expansion of the convention center.
Yes. So Kite is technically developing the convention center expansion, but that is being funded differently than the hotels.
Are they looking for incentives for developing the hotels?
The short answer is we don't know, but if you look at other massive hotels, such as the JW Marriott that came online ahead of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, 1,000-room hotel.
Yes, they got a pretty good deal from the city. I think it was around $50 million in incentives for that project. So it wouldn't be surprising if Kite is looking for something along those lines.
If you had to guess, of the 19 hotel projects that we've been referencing, which do you think will open first?
There's a couple options there, but I think the far and away winner would probably be BottleWorks. That's expected to open later this year, 139 rooms as part of their first phase of development. And it should be noted that they're not planning additional rooms for the hotel as part of future phases.
Yeah.
But
and this is the northeast end of what we consider to be like the Mass Ave district.
Correct.
And it's part of a huge development of commercial and residential and retail.
Correct, and it would actually go into the former Coca-Cola bottling plant.
Right.
They're kind of retrofitting that and renovating it into a hotel.
So what would you think would be next?
So that's where things get a little bit more complicated because there's a few projects pretty far along, including that Hampton Homewood project I talked to you about earlier. That's going to add 231 rooms. Sun Development hopes to have that done by the end of this year. Then there's also that Tribute Hotel that sits at Delaware and East Washington Street that whenever I drive by, it looks like it's getting some work done to it. And they were shooting for an end of the year opening as well.
Yeah, and this is an office building that they're going to, I believe, add some floors to.
Yeah, they're adding at least one floor to the building to make space for more rooms and for a bar. So that's expected to open by the end of this year. And then the Intercontinental Hotel, a very, very posh hotel at 17 West Market Street, is expected to open by Q1 of next year. There were some questions about whether that project was stalled or not at one time because it didn't look like there was a lot of work going on. but they've been ripping out the interior of that building, and they're actually in the process of building out model rooms for the Intercontinental Hotels Group, the owner of the Intercontinental brand, to approve before they build out the rest of the rooms.
Gotcha. Now, of the 19 that we know about, we looked at this number here in the newsroom, and we scoff a little bit and think, there's no way all of these are going to get built.
Right.
We can't really say what's going to happen. But what have you found generally in the industry? What's the ratio of hotels that get built to those who don't?
So typically the attrition rate for hotels is around 20 to 25%, according to STR, which is a world leader in hotel statistics. They're based in Nashville. They say about 20 to 25% of hotels that are planned really never get built. And with so many planned for this single area downtown, it's possible that number could be higher. Right now, we're looking at about 4 to 5 hotels that won't get built with that figure. It could be higher. It really just depends on how the economy is once they secure financing, whether construction costs are going to continue to rise, and whether there really is a demand in the market at the time they're getting ready to start construction for more new rooms.
Yeah, and I feel almost obligated to say, as I briefly noted with Drew, the one big wildcard right now is coronavirus and what that is going to do to the hospitality industry overall.
And talking with an analyst at STR, they're still trying to figure it out for themselves. They're looking to the Marriotts and the Hiltons of the world to kind of see how their numbers are in the first few months of this year to get an idea for how the rest of the year could go. But the answer isn't really clear yet because it's just now hitting the United States. It's continuing to develop as we sit here talking about it. So it's really not clear what it's going to do to our market and to other markets.
All right, well, let's check in a few months. Great reporting. Thanks a lot, Mickey.
Thank you.
My thanks again to Mickey Shuey and Drew Dimond. If you'd like to see a complete accounting of all the downtown hotel projects in play, check out Mickey's story in the latest issue of IBJ. And before you get on with the rest of your week, there are a few other stories I want to bring to your attention. Anthony Shutley reports that the long-planned 16 Tech Innovation District along Indiana Avenue has reached a pivotal moment. The first office building in the $500 million project will open in June, which could serve as a catalyst for tremendous growth on the 50-acre campus and elsewhere downtown. Also in this week's issue, Mickey takes a close look at the effects so far of the coronavirus epidemic on Indianapolis' tourism industry. And Lindsay Erdody unpacks the tensions between state lawmakers and Indianapolis officials as the legislature considers several bills aimed directly at the Circle City. And some folks say lawmakers are inserting themselves too far into local affairs. You can find all these stories in the latest print edition of IBJ or online at ibj.com. I will say that it's quite a bit easier to find and read these stories if you are a subscriber. So please remember that for full and unfettered access to all of IBJ's award-winning business content, just click the subscribe button. Thanks again for making time this week for the IBJ podcast, which is edited by Leslie Whitenbenner. I'm Mason King, and we'll be back again next week.